Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob, and today we'll be jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Scouter of Roy. Is it okay if I fire you? Let's jump right in. Obligatory long-time reader, first-time poster. This is a story of malicious compliance that a previous boss had done, but involved me directly, as will be explained. Time frame is early 2000s for reference. In my late high school and early college years, I had a job doing telemarketing work during winter and summer breaks. While it was boiler room cold calling, we primarily were soliciting donations for agencies that had contacted us to do the work, so felt less scuzzy. Think police departments, fire departments, etc. We kept a portion of donations for operating expenses. Everything over a certain threshold went directly to the receiving party. Everybody wins. I enjoyed the job as the scripts were simple. I was allowed to read a book and such between calls, and a number of my friends were also employed there, so we could hang out during lunch breaks. The pay was a decent chunk above minimum wage at that time, so it was a good gig. I also had a knack for it, and at one point was 5th in sales across all their sites they had in operation, 2nd in our building. One summer, while driving to work, my car promptly dies with no warning, and I'm left stranded on the road. As you do in this situation back before cell phones for poor college students were a thing, I walk to the nearest house and ask to use the phone. I call my dad, who starts driving to get me, and call my work to let them know I'll be late. My boss says fine and that he will chat with me when I get in. Father shows up with my mother in 2 cars. I take the extra and he begins the arduous process of towing my car back to the house. This involved tying a rope to the front of the car and to the back of his vehicle and crawling back home so he could fix it himself. I've been in that back car and did not envy my father being in the back car with only 10 feet of space between him and the car my mother was driving, but I'm off to work. I arrive to work, clock in almost an hour after the start of my shift, and am promptly told by the front receptionist that my boss would like to see me in his office, so I head on back. Beginning details completed, cue the start of the malicious compliance story. My boss and I have always had a good rapport. I am a good worker, get good reviews, and he and I have some similar interests outside of work we can chat about occasionally. When I arrive in his office, he's shuffling some papers around and has laid out a few documents facing me. As close as I can recall, this is the conversation that followed. Hope everything worked out with the car, glad to have you here. Couple things I need to discuss with you. First of all, as I'm sure you're aware, being more than 30 minutes late to work is considered a Class C violation. 3 classes, from C to A, C being the least egregious, if insufficient time is given prior to the occurrence. This is your first violation, so I'd like to talk to you about what happens next. I'm sweating at this point. I've never even been talked to about being out of order on anything while working here, and getting my first violation scared the heck out of me. So I'm sitting there, white-faced, and he continues. No official write-up or anything occurs for a first violation, or even the first few Class C violations, but it is manager's discretion on the punishment depending on past behaviors. Now, you are a good employee, and I've put into corporate a few times to give you a raise, but because you only work during your school breaks, it is denied as you aren't considered full-time. So the papers I have here are your termination papers and an offer letter I'd like to extend to you to hire you back on again. So in short, before I file these, I'd like to ask, is it okay if I fire you? So we go through the process of him firing me, which then allowed him to extend an offer to me to rehire me at roughly 25% increase in pay, since he could justify to corporate the bump as he was hiring someone with experience. In talking with him, he let me know it was something he occasionally did to the high school and college workers to get around the corporate policy of not allowing raises to people that didn't work 1,000 hours in a year. It was his own way of being maliciously compliant with a policy that didn't allow him to reward some people that he thought deserved it. He had been apparently waiting for me to do something that he could technically fire me for. The way their back-end system worked, it wouldn't even show up as a break in service, since the firing and hiring happened on the same day, and since I never worked more than the minimum 1,000 hours each year, I didn't have any tenure or anything to be worried about losing. The laugh he and the receptionist had when he walked me back to the front to introduce her to the new employee was enjoyable, and I've had a fun story to tell ever since. So you mean to tell me that this malicious compliance was a good one and it was done by your boss? What? I think Reddit's broken. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Ancient Educator. You better bring back every box of candy you don't sell. I'll get right on that, Chief. Let's jump right in. In the lovely sunny state of Arizona, as a 13 to 15-year-old, I spent my summers selling candy and other items door to door in the 122-degree heat for a man we'll call Big Al. This guy was a character. Imagine a fat, unshaven Axl Rose, Axl Rose, with a ponytail of red and graying hair, wearing glasses and a hat that says, "Piss on Nissan," because he always buys American. He was a walking caricature. I loved the gung-ho Americana, but didn't like his unscrupulous nature, if you will. Besides being an obvious chomo, that is another story for later, but he had raunchy conversations about his genitalia ad nauseum with the girls that rode with us and sold candy. There was always this one girl who was always last to be dropped off, and mysteriously she was dropped off alone, despite girls needing to be paired up. This was just a new level of creepy. He gave us each a box of crappy things to sell for $5 a pop in 1992, and we got $1 commission per box. He would pick us up at our residence, select suites, more like a trailer park, in his Impala-ish looking car. It was so wide that it looked like two side-by-side motorcycles in the dark. He would drive us to ritzy neighborhoods and was super strict about the sales process, like we were going to screw him over or something. He would just drive an hour out of town, middle of the day, in some fancy place like Ahwatukee and drop one of us off in an apartment complex. We all fought to be the first dropped off. We would get out with our box, he would have us right then and there recount each and he would write it down. And he would always say, "You better bring back every box of candy you don't sell." I should have known that this dude was being extra, and this indicated that he was actually screwing us. So anyway, I'm doing this for a while now, and at least half of the time he says, "The count says you should have 4 Butterfinger bites, you only have 2 left, so you sold 2, where's that money?" I swear that I didn't have 4. I even counted them to him, but he insisted. So on a day where I sell 16 items, I make 11 instead of 16, and he pockets the remaining 69 bucks. Now, if this happened once a month or even once a week, I would understand. But it was getting to almost every day this guy was questioning at least 2 of our counts. He eventually moved off changing my counts when he realized I was catching on, and then he picked on the newbies. I was still livid about this though. He was already making a killing by keeping 80% of the sales, so a missing box really killed our profit margin. Seriously, I was getting better at selling and eventually got to a point where each stop was 10 sales and would pull in close to 30 a night. That was a great pull for me, until one day when he said what he always says. So much so that we all say it along with him. Did I think of a way to truly comply while still making a profit? Now about this candy he was selling. It was cheap, dollar store before dollar stores were a thing type of items. It was literally a box of peanut brittle that you would pay no more than $2 for today. I hatched a plan to truly bring him his candy, every last box. As we were driving around waiting to be dropped off, and all the kids started saying, "Mine, mine, mine," like the seagulls in Finding Nemo, I let them all pop out where they wanted, because I knew what neighborhood I wanted, one that was adjacent to a grocery store. My wish came true, and I happened upon not just a Fry's, but a Walgreens right next to it, right across the street from some great looking apartments. Al saves this for his favorites usually, but I begged him to take this one, and really hoped I got the solo spot. I did. I got dropped off, and automatically regretted not having money with me already. Some people are paycheck to paycheck. My dad and I grew up paycheck to Wednesday. Either way, I managed to get 2 people to buy in the first 10 minutes, meaning I had about an hour or so left, so I could take the money I made and bought some candy from the grocery store to sell. So I've got 25 bucks that I would only make $5 of, so I decided to take a risk and actually buy more candy than the money I would have. And if worst came to worst, I would say I got shorted. Thankfully, it didn't happen that way. I bought 20 bucks worth of candy from the Walgreens, peppermint patties in a row, peanut brittle, king-size candy bars, Things I think that would sell that didn't have a lot of chocolate. We had dry ice, but we had to get creative with the placement, and the cold aspect of the candy was a huge selling point. My box was overflowing, and when I hit the remaining 90% of apartments, it was a smorgasbord. You guys usually only have crap candy. I'll take this and that. I was selling all items for only $4 and made $80 off of the 20 I spent pretty quickly. I actually made 100 because some of my regulars demanded I take more money. I then went back and got more candy, last minute thought, to sell for my next stop. I know I was taking a risk doing this second one. I should have just stopped, but I had to push. I picked up 10 more candies, the stuff that sold first, and loaded the box in a way that these weren't visible at first glance in the box. And I pocketed the non-chocolate items. So Al comes back on his chariot, making his usual mating call of "Richie!" And then a brief pause, then a bunch of horn honks, to follow the cycle again. It was actually hilarious because for some reason, his horn only worked while he was turning. This made for some hilarious scenarios. So I popped back in telling him I sold 5, more like 25, and he was, "Seriously? This is why I give this one to the girls." Yeah, I know all about what you give to the girls, bro. And based on your unnecessary graphic description, it's the dimensions of a beer can. Gross. I was going to argue my favorite pastime, but I left it and wanted to see where I got dropped off next time. By the end of the night, I sold 30 of my stuff that I bought and 8 of his. I gave him back every box of his I didn't sell, and even gave him too much money by $4 because I didn't do my math right. I still wound up with well over 100 that night, 5 times what I do on my best night. OP added a couple edits onto the story. The first one says, "Did I do this more than once? I did this at least once a week," about the frequency of me being dropped off near a grocery store. Eventually, the apartment people knew the gig was up when one of them who worked at the store saw me leaving with bags of candy. I know that they know the candy wasn't worth the money they paid, but they didn't think it was just some kid getting candy from the store and reselling it. Needless to say, the effectiveness tapered for a bit. There was a revival when we went to other neighborhoods. One time he found a candy that wasn't his in the box, and I told him I got hungry and went to the store. I could see those Chomo wheels slowly turning, but then they stopped again. This was right around the time that I got a job through a summer program through my high school. Combine this with my sales of his candy tapering off, then it was a mutual split. I always wanted to know what happened to Al Black of Valley Teens. I'm totally comfortable saying this because this guy's probably dead now. He was old 34 years ago. I could only imagine right now. Second edit says, "Was the extra money a good thing overall? The extra money was really good for my dad and I. I grew up from age 3 on with just my dad. My mom tried to come back into the picture, mainly to get more benefits or somehow save money, when I was 9. But my dad threw a TV at her, like those 1980s heavy AF ones, like the day after she moved in. I usually split the extra money down the middle by telling my dad I sold a lot that night, keeping the rest for myself to play pool or video games or something equally wasteful. We had the cops called on us a time or two. Al did not like that, but we usually knew our limits, who usually bought from us, things like that. One time this guy gave me a solid 20 and would not take a thing from me. Then he asked me if I was stealing the extra candy. He somehow knew my deal, and I said no and even showed him the receipt. So he gave me another 20. It was a great evening. The kicker, when I was selling door to door at some nice houses off the South Mountain Preserve, I told myself, I'm gonna live here one day. Now I do. I bought that house for $570,000 in 2005. So I know you guys have called me out for having way too many jobs in the past, but it is what it is. I did once work for a company that did door-to-door collections for charities, quote unquote. We'd knock on the door, go through our spiel, try and get money out of people. We'd get to keep 35% of what we brought in, and then the person that was driving us around would keep a cut as well, and then his boss would keep a cut as well. And I'm not really sure how much made it back to the charity, but I guarantee you it wasn't very much. I look back on it now and realize it was kinda shady, but at the time, I didn't care. I was making bank. Our last story today comes to us from Renticle. Can't leave before the end of my notice period? No problem. Let's jump right in. Last month, my manager drops a bombshell. The company has decided to scrap the big project that my team's been working on for the past 2 years. We must wrap up everything, and starting from June, we will all be moved to different teams. Now, I'm a data analyst, and the company doesn't have any open projects that require a data analyst. So they look at my profile, saw I had some basic knowledge of programming, and decided to move me to the dev team. Both me and the dev team think it's an insane idea, because I will need lots of training before I become useful, and I don't even want to be a full-time dev. But upper management hasn't bothered to ask for our opinion before making all the arrangements. I immediately start looking for a new job, and as luck would have it, there is an extremely high request for data analysts in my area. Within a few weeks, I have an offer in hand, and I give my notice. My contract, I'm in the EU, is very strict regarding notice periods. A resigning employee must give 2 months notice. This is entirely for the benefit of the company that will need to find a replacement. The same applies when a company fires an employee, they must give the employee 2 months notice. However, it's possible to shorten the notice period by mutual agreement. So when I sit down with my manager in HR, I tell them I'd like to give only 2 weeks notice and leave at the end of May. I tell them that I've already started wrapping up my activities before my move to the dev team, and I don't have any ongoing projects that I need to transfer to my colleagues. So 2 weeks would be more than enough to finish documenting everything. They say absolutely no. I have to stay here for the entire 2 months period, which is fine by me. My new job doesn't start until August, and I don't mind being paid in the meantime. The only reason I suggested shortening the notice period was because I thought I was doing the company a favor. I thought I'd be stealing their paycheck if I stayed for 2 months, even though I don't have anything left to do. But since they pretty much told me I was being unprofessional, or that I was trying to cut and run, okay, I'll take their money in exchange for sitting around doing nothing for a few more weeks. You may think, but OP, they're going to find some boring task for you. Well, they can certainly try, but the projects they're working on are so different from what I do that I'm pretty much useless to them. For example, someone will ask, can you do XYZ? And I will honestly answer, I have no idea what an XYZ even is, but I will be happy to help if you teach me. At that point, they'll say it would take too long, and it's not worth it to train me since I'm leaving soon. So my working days now go like this. I show up at 9 a.m. sharp and go to my office, where I'm the only person, since the others were moved to different teams. I have a leisurely second breakfast, check my email, then I send a message to our Teams group letting them know that I'm free and to ask me if they need help with anything. Then I remote into my home PC and play until lunchtime. I have lunch, coffee, I chat with my coworkers. They're quite nice. It's too bad that upper management is crazy. I'm going to miss them. In the afternoon, I usually check Reddit. I chat with my friends if they're online, play a bit more, and I'm out the door at 5 p.m. By the way, they would like for me to vacate the office so they can use it as a meeting room, but they can't until I leave. There are no empty desks anywhere. The dev team already hired someone else and has no space, so tough luck. Well, OP, I think you missed an opportunity. When they tell you that they want you to vacate their office so they can use it as a meeting room, you just need to turn around and say, oh, well, I guess I could work from home to free up the space. Check out all 3 OPs at the links in the description down below. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.